Jasperwood Drive and Knollwood Drive area improvements, and the 2019 South Sanitary Sewer Interceptor improvements. K, approve the J.R. Furchy Inc. final pay estimate number 11 in the amount of $249,677.54 for the 2019 Mapleton Road, Jasperwood Drive, and Knollwood Drive area improvements, and the 2019 South Sanitary Sewer Interceptor improvements with contingencies. L, approve the Anderson Brothers Construction Company change order number 5 in the increased amount of $4,326 for the lift station number 11 reconstruction project. M, approve the Anderson Brothers Construction Company partial pay estimate number 3 in the amount of $4,326 for the lift station number 11 reconstruction project. And approve the R.L. Larson Inc. change order number 8 in the increased amount of $10,851 for the 2020 South Sanitary Sewer Interceptor, North Forest View improvements, and North Forest View stormwater outfall improvements project. O, approve R.L. Larson Excavating Inc. partial pay estimate number 8 in the amount of $18,902.15 for the 2020 South Sanitary Sewer Interceptor, North Forest View improvements, and North Forest View stormwater outfall improvements project. P, approve the project documents for 2021 water treatment plant filter 1 and 2 media replacement with contingencies. Q, approve license model change for purchase of a Laserfitch municipal site license.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Cross.
Second.
Second by Tabbitt. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Cross,
Yes.
Licio,
yes,
Tabbitt,
Yes.
Ward,
yes,
Yes.
Olson.
We move on to number 8A, approve resolution 2021-006, approving a variance to the amount of required parking to allow for a warehouse area to be converted into retail space for property located at 15236 Delwood Drive. Josh?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you give me just a quick second to share screen, I will do that. All right. Can you guys see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so the request is for a variance for minimum parking for Menards. The site, you're all, of course, familiar with Menards in Baxter, located off Delwood Drive. The property received an expansion project in 2018, and the expansion project included numerous applications at the time, including a number of different variances and conditional use permits to allow the expansion. And the expansion allowed an accessory building construction on the south end, a reorientation of the yard area where you enter the yard portion of the site, as well as an addition onto the existing accessory building in the back, and then other improvements related to the site. At that time, a parking variance was approved by the city on behalf of Menards. Specifically, that variance allowed a 100 stall parking shortage on behalf of that plan that was presented in 2018. Specifically, there are 358 parking stalls on the site of Menards. And at that time, 423 were required by the zoning ordinance. Shortly after that approval, Menards applied for building permits to complete the construction that was requested in 2018. And at that time, the city learned of some plans for Menards to expand mezzanine space And at that time, a second variance was required because the mezzanine wasn't calculated with the first set of applications that came through the Planning Commission and City Council in 2018. So Menards came back through the process and got a second variance to allow a 113 parking stall shortage. One item to note from that second variance approval is that the mezzanine, with the exception of one small office and break room area, the entire mezzanine was calculated as warehouse space. And that was how the parking was calculated to have a requirement of 13 additional stalls from the previously approved 100 stall shortage variance. And this is a site plan from that timeframe and that expansion. You can see all of the items in red are the expansion areas on the Menards site. So looking at the application in front of you this evening, this is a request for a parking variance to change the classification of that mezzanine space from warehouse to retail. Got a couple of definitions at the bottom here. Those are definitions out of the zoning ordinance. And essentially the request is to allow those mezzanine areas to be opened up to the public so that although the Menards plans for moving forward with the mezzanine space is to have an overstock area where they have extra product that's on the sales floor and seasonal items in this area in the mezzanine. The City of Baxter's zoning ordinance does have definitions for retail and warehousing space. And based on those definitions, the city determined that the change by opening those areas up to the public as a shopping area, even if they are overstock and seasonal items, does require at this time, based on our current code, a change in use classification from warehouse in the mezzanine to retail space in the mezzanine. And so when that use changes from warehouse to retail, the parking requirements change as well. And so that is the reason for the variance this evening. The applicant would like to have the mezzanine open to the public so that they can go up and grab the extra product or seasonal product that they want without needing Menards staff to let them up the stairs or grant them access to the elevator. This is just a breakdown of the parking calculation as recalculated for the variance this evening. When you take into account all the various square footages, parking easement that they have with Applebee's, in the end, there's a 187 stall parking shortage that's being requested this evening. One item to note in the staff report and attachments that's in the packet this evening, there are a number of pictures regarding on-street parking adjacent to the Menards store. I'm not going to go through all the pictures unless any of the council would like me to do that. I do have that built in the end of the PowerPoint if anyone's interested. But just note for the record that there has been parking on some of the city streets, specifically Whispering Woods and Pearl Drive, which are both roadways located north of the retail store. The application was reviewed by the Planning Commission. They voted 3-2 to recommend approval of the variance subject to 2 conditions, and those conditions are added to the draft resolution that's in front of you this evening. One condition was that the parking lot and related drive aisles shall not be used for parking of semi-trucks and the related trailers. There's been, over the last period of time, a semi-trailer or 2 that are staging and are parking in the parking spaces and drive aisles in the store. It's not their customer semi-trucks and trailers because they do plug into the outlet poles to keep the engine block supplied with electricity. And so that condition was added. The second condition the Planning Commission recommended was that Menards completely remove snow storage piles from the site within 24 hours of snow events to maintain all available parking in the parking lot. Looking at the Planning Commission discussion on that item, it was noted that there's a large snow pile on the north end of the parking lot, which limits access to the current parking stalls that they have in the wintertime. So that is the Planning Commission's recommendation in front of you this evening. I do want to note the Utilities Commission recommendation. They did recommend denial of the variance for parking based on a couple findings, and you can see those findings there. I do need to note for the record that typically the Utilities Commission does recommend directly to the Planning Commission for their consideration. However, we had a bit of a unusual circumstance where the Utilities Commission, due to some technical difficulties, couldn't have their meeting before the regular Planning Commission, so they had that meeting after. So I shared this recommendation with the council just for a point of record, but I also want to make on the record that the formal recommendation that is for the city council's consideration tonight is the recommendation for approval of the variance from the Planning Commission. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the council and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Josh, I have a quick question for you. Does Menards have a passenger elevator to get to the mezzanine?
Mayor, council, yes, they added an elevator that's fully accessible. It's a large elevator so that people could take carts up and down. So yes, they added that with the mezzanine expansion area. There's also a number of different staircases that there's 4 or 5 stairs that go up to the mezzanine as well. So it's fully accessible.
All right.
I have another question on the same line, that it sounds like the elevator would be adequate for handicap accessible, but what about the mezzanine in itself? Is all of that area handicap accessible?
Good question. One of the conditions in the resolution is that any required building permits, if the variance is approved, any required building permits related to the change in use would be required. And I guess I can't answer that entirely today. So the city's building official would have the ability to require a use permit where that could be evaluated. I did walk the entire mezzanine with Menards employee, and it's definitely all one flat surface. In terms of, so I would say that it's likely accessible, and it appeared that the widths of the aisles are accessible. I did not experience any kind of breaks in the flat surface on that upper level. But in terms of all of the aisles where product is stored, I guess I don't know for sure if the entire mezzanine would be considered fully accessible at this time. I would need to defer through the permit process on that.
Well, I would like to see something from Menards that says that they are, ADA guidelines and requirements and standards of that whole area, in order to approve it, in my opinion. And they've also agreed then to remove those semis and those snow piles. And I also saw that there's no parking on one of the streets north of Menards there, but they've been using that. So those are still concerns, aren't they, Josh?
Yeah, they are concerns. In terms of going back to your first comment on the accessibility, the city reviews accessibility through the building permit process. So, perhaps if the council needs comfort of that this evening, they could ask the applicant who is with us this evening, and perhaps Tyler could comment on the accessible nature of that mezzanine space. But we would do a review if the variance is approved to ensure that it's accessible for it to be considered a retail space. The accessibility review is done by the building official through a use permit. So to answer your question on parking on city streets, it is a concern. Staff raised it to the Planning Commission. The 2 streets that are being parked on by Menards, whether it's customers, employees, we didn't run plates to check who it is specifically, assume it's employees, but is primarily parking on Pearl Drive, which is presently not signed for no parking, but the concern there is they're parking on both sides of the street. It's a relatively quiet street at this time because there's one real estate office building built to the north, but with cars on both sides, it does limit it is a bit of a safety concern in terms of proper traffic safety flow on that street. So the city may need to look at that in terms of considering signing it for no parking in the future, especially if parking on the street were to increase. And then on Whispering Woods, which is the road north of the store that runs east and west, that roadway is already signed for no parking. The one photo that we did take of parking on Whispering Woods, I will note for the council that photo was taken on Black Friday, which is, as we all know, a very high demand for all retail stores. And so that is just noted for the record. I think the primary parking that we've seen so far has been on Pearl Drive and not Whispering Woods, although that was that one day where they did park in front of the no parking signs.
Thank you, Josh. I look forward to hearing from the representative from Menards on all of those questions and issues.
Council, anybody else got questions, comments? I assume you read the report. It was very thorough.
Yeah, I do have concerns with Pearl Drive because I'm one who has had to go back to that real estate office quite often. And there's been times when if you're meeting a car on that road and there happens to be parked cars on both sides, it's an issue.
Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if we're talking about having a bigger discussion at this point, or you're just asking for questions of Josh. I had some more comments that maybe could be answered or not. Is this the time that you'd?
No, we'll come back for that. I just wanted to know if you had any comments before we turn it over to the Menards people. Then we'll bring it back.
Sounds good.
Okay, Tyler, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Everyone hear me okay? Tyler Edwards from Menards.
Yeah.
All right, Tyler Edwards, real estate representative from Menards. I've been working in Baxter for quite a few years now. I should probably start by saying we are not here trying to rock the boat or be difficult or put the city in a tough position. We are, for lack of a better word, trying to work with the hand we were dealt when we picked this spot 20 plus years ago. Hindsight, obviously, you know as well as we know, it's a cramped spot. There's a swamp behind us. There's lots in front of us. We're doing the best we can. We know that there's some parking issues. That being said, what we're asking for this time is related to the mezzanine space. As a refresher, when we did our remodel 2 years ago, we took a bunch of storage racks that were 20 feet tall. It was unsafe. It was a poor way of storing materials. We put them on the mezzanine space. We do not want this space to be retail space. I cannot stress that enough. I acknowledge in talking to Josh that there's no other code alternative, but we do not want to and do not consider this retail space. This is storage space, like our lumber yard is storage space, like our warehouse is a storage space. You can tell when you go up there, this is not given the same treatment as the rest of the sales floor. Initially, earlier last year, we were told that allowing customers in the mezzanine was not permitted. They needed to be roped off, which we did, and there'd be fines and penalties if customers were caught up there. So we immediately complied. And then we went through this summer, and I'm sure you know that home improvement sales and COVID, and we basically had Black Friday every Saturday and Sunday and some weekdays throughout the summer. Certainly good for sales, but just really threw everything out the window, which really brings us to a lot of the parking on the public streets. Our store managers through the course of the year had other managers in the store, the management team, park out of the parking lot to create more spaces for guests, help just relieve a little bit of congestion. They're there long periods of time. They thought it'd be a little bit easier. Our operations team now knows that that is not allowed and it won't be happening anymore. And, you know, same with the trucks that are parked in the parking lots. That is it was not the best choice when we were remodeling the back. Some things got shuffled around and never got corrected. That is now corrected with our management team, that there's no more parking semi trucks in front of the Menards store. You know, like I said, we acknowledge that we're tight on space, we're tight on parking, but what we're asking for is not anything more that's already there today. We're not changing anything. We don't really want to turn the mezzanine into sales floor. It's not the intention. I understand that's what the code says. So we move on from that. But we've had a series of complaints from people that visit Menards frequently and know what they're doing or know what they want. They know where things are in the mezzanine. They're contractors, they're builders, there's remodelers. These guys don't want to wait and go find a person for another 10 minutes when they can get in and out. They can carry a cabinet down the stairs. They can put it in the elevator. Normal people like me, or maybe you guys, are probably going to want someone to haul that grill down for us or move a cabinet for us. 90% of Menards customers have never been in the mezzanine. So this is not a generator, but we try to keep everyone happy. It is 2021 now. Retail sales are always tough. So we try to appease everybody in every way we can, and we want people to go up on our mezzanine. So that's really why we ended up making the request. I'm going to go down the list of comments I jotted down as far as accessibility of the mezzanine space. Yes, that has to be ADA certified for our team members to use in the event they have any disability that we have to accommodate. We could work with the city staff to verify that, but from our perspective, that is compliant. I did briefly talk about parking on the city roads. Outside of a couple of the busiest days in a normal year, Black Friday, maybe Mother's Day, our parking lot is certainly never spilling over the borders. This was a really bad year in terms of traffic. Good years in sales, but bad year in terms of traffic. It was just crazy. So that's why the managers are parking on the road. They know they can't do that anymore. I covered the trucks in the lot and parking on Pearl Drive. So I think I covered your comments, unless you have anything specific for me. We did get into detail with the Planning Commission that, yes, Menards came back to the table and asked for a parking variance again, but it's not because we're expanding or changing. It's really just to allow guests up to an existing space. Maybe there's a restriction that we can't turn into sales for. I don't know. Haven't really talked to Josh about that, but that's certainly not our intent. We want to stay in this location. This spot has worked well. We don't think we're quite at the point where we need to move the store. So we're just asking you to help us out and then allow guests up in the mezzanine and continue operating on this corner in Baxter.
And the snow removal in the parking lot, was that addressed?
Yeah, we talked about that. Came up in the Planning Commission. We didn't get a chance to talk about it with them. Historically, winter is the slowest time at Menards. I mean, if that's what we have to do to move forward, I guess that's what we have to do. But this is, when it snows heavily, there's not a lot of people shopping at Menards. That's not when the shortage occurs. So we would like to not have to remove the snow, but if that's what it is what it is.
Anybody else got questions for Tyler? Questions or comments?
Tyler, I appreciate, sorry, Zach.
Go ahead.
Hi, John.
Thank you, Mayor. Tyler, I appreciate the answers to those questions and that all of the concerns that we had. And I know that both Planning and Zoning and Utility Commission struggled with this as well. And so, I, for one, appreciate the Menards operation and everything that you do there and do for our community, just like all of our businesses. And so, we, all of us, want to, I think, try to help, our business growth and do everything we can to make sure that every business is successful. So, you answered all the questions appropriate for me, so I'm going to probably support this, but I also am going to hold your feet to the fire as well, especially with the ADA stuff. So I just want you to be aware of that, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Zach?
I guess just one question on the mezzanine. From the pictures that I saw, it looked like, if I can just use the terminology that was used earlier in the presentation, it looked like a warehouse to me. If you could just speak to, Tyler, are there retail pricing and signage in that area?
So everything in the mezzanine is really stored in boxes, or it's something that was brought up from the sales floor because it's out of season. If you flip through those pictures, you see doors and boxes, you see cabinets and boxes. That's because those are on display down on the sales floor, and there's probably one or two of them stocked down there. The problem is you get people that need to replace 10 doors in their house, or they're doing a whole kitchen. So we have to have them on staff or in stock, because if they're not there, people get mad. They have to wait for half of their product to show up. So it's really the cold storage of stuff that we already sell. The exception being, in the wintertime, when it's not Christmas, we sell living room furniture downstairs. Well, in the summertime, we put all our grill and patio furniture down there. So the old living room furniture goes up there. It's probably not in the box like it was just shipped to the store. But everything is intended to be a duplicate of what's on the sales floor in just a larger quantity and easier to access. You'll notice from the signs in some of the photos, at least in my packet, they're labeled with department numbers. They have SKUs. You can tell what it is. A lot of times they'll have a similar price tag or barcode just because we need that SKU next to the product. But I mean, it's got plywood floors, it's got steel racking. It is nothing like our sales floor.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think everything in my mind's been answered. As far as all the questions that were brought up, I'd like to see them put into conditions and applied to the motion.
All right. I would just like to make some comments since I've been here through most of these variances. I got to be real honest with you. When we had the second variance asking for 113 spots, I went along with it, but I bit my lip, and I sat there thinking about all the other businesses that we have not done that for, and what repercussions may come back for that. But we did it, and so I think that I agree with what Councilmember Ward is saying. We want to work with our people, but I think we have really done that with this organization. We have stretched really to the limits in a lot of cases. Now we're coming back for 187. I don't know how we're going to explain that to anybody. It just doesn't seem right. And COVID, I grant Tyler that one. COVID this is a separate year, but it's been this way before COVID, and it's been a parking issue there. If we change the zoning to that upstairs there to retail, I know today it's not their intent, but once that happens, it'll be my understanding that that's carte blanche to have a second floor of the business. And then if we pass this and that happens, there's been no provision then for parking. We've just turned a blind eye on that. So I think that in some cases we create some of our own problems, and I think this is one of them. I don't pretend to tell a business how to run their business. I'm not qualified for that at all. But what I don't understand is if you're in a business that's pretty much landlocked and opportunities come up literally within arm's length of your store, why you wouldn't jump at that and alleviate some of these problems once and for all. There was an opportunity when the piece that when the bank went down, Wells Fargo went down, right in front there where Firehouse Subs is now. That piece was available. It was talked about, but they didn't have any interest. Now there's a piece across the street on the north side, which is available, and they could be done with it. I look at a couple of examples. The Mills Fleet Farm building is, their complex is built right to the max, just like Menards kind of is now. And they were built with zero room, and they were actually parking cars over at the dealership, the GM dealership. They did not meet the requirements in the code either. They bought the land across the street to the south by Kohl's there to create a parking lot for their employees. They, based on the zoning ordinance that was in effect at the time, that was the right thing to do as far as I'm concerned. We go up the highway to Toyota, they bought the lot behind themselves there for their employees to park there, got their people away from their buildings and whatnot. And Mills Ford has the lot to the east across behind, not that they need it, they've got all kinds of room. But it can be done, and other big boxes have done that. And it just seems to me, again, not telling anybody how to run their business, but if you've got your business built the way you want it and it's running fine, and the only problem is parking, why wouldn't we deal with that? And in a fairly, yeah, it's a few bucks, don't get me wrong, but it's a fairly simplistic answer to be done with it, you know, kind of once and for all. So I have a problem with it. I think that I think we have been fair. I think we've been more than fair, and I just think that I just think that it could be resolved, and it doesn't seem like anybody wants to talk about it or do it, and that's their option. So anyway, that's my 50 cents worth there. So anybody else? Zach?
Share some thoughts here, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize for following you up with maybe a 180-degree different read on this. I wasn't here for the prior situation, so I read through all this and looked at it, and the first thing that I was wondering is, I think that was an argument made by Menards, is that does the space itself even truly qualify as retail? And Josh, you were there, you made the determination, so I am not trying to second guess your judgment, but based on what I saw today, just on the definition of retail, the definition of warehouse, as long as 49% or less of that time usage up in that space is for retail, it reads to me like maybe it's not even retail space. It's primarily used to store goods and products. So I guess I just felt like the idea of going the extra distance on 84 extra parking stalls didn't really seem like it really was necessary. And I know we're working off of a formulaic code. It kind of bothered me that we'd have to add that many parking spaces for what the specific ask is, and maybe we're handcuffed by that. It just seems to me like we could, there's room to argue in terms of the definition of the space and whether or not that would really increase traffic to the store to the extent to need 84 more parking spots, among other things. I don't know. I totally understand the parking concerns, but if like Pearl Drive, for example, I can't personally take that as something worthy of consideration in my decision making. If it's not signed for no parking, I don't really know how we can take into consideration whether or not people are parking there or not, or where they belong or where they don't belong. It's public parking until it's signed otherwise. Whispering Woods Lane's a different story, being signed that way. So I guess I say all of that, just maybe the bigger question I have here is our bigger picture parking requirements code something that we need to discuss in a later discussion on top of all of this? But I guess I'm reading all of the things brought before us as I think it would be reasonable to give them the variance. I drove through Menards just yesterday. I would be shocked if 40% of that parking lot was full. And I know it's a winter afternoon, but it just didn't seem like we would, like the city would benefit from adding a massive amount more parking that's going to generally sit relatively empty and on those busy days then fill up. I just don't see the benefit in that. But I know there's many opinions in this whole deal, and I do respect all of them. So just wanted to throw out my thoughts there. I would generally be in favor of allowing them to let people up there. Now, the flip side of that being, you know, Menards, you're dealing with a known set of contractors that you could probably also solve this problem by having a dedicated staff member or more to handle the more demanding guests that come in. So there's a lot going on here, but I just would like to leave it at that, I guess.
Okay, thank you. With seeing none, we look for a motion then.
I will move for approval of the variance with the conditions that were requested and were on there originally. I don't know if someone needs to specifically state any other conditions they were requesting.
I would second that.
Motion by Zach, second by Alessio. Any further discussion or comments? Roll call.
Cross.
I have a quick comment, but I was muted, sorry. So just to clarify the motion, is that just including the two conditions that came from the planning commission, or are they? or
My
is it-
intent was to allow for any conditions that the rest of you had intended to ask for. I am not opposed to any conditions anyone else here wanted, but it would stand at those two unless otherwise stated, I guess.
Okay, so official, I'm not sure how I asked for this, if it's a motion to amend the motion, but I would ask that we add conditions to all those bullet points that we talked about here at the council, that their representative agreed to.
Got that, Brad?
So as I understand, it would be ADA, assurance of ADA compliance. And then were there any other than just the ADA that I am missing?
That the trailers parking in the lot and the snow removal, I don't know if that's a part of this or not.
Those were part of the planning commission recommendation. So it'd be those items and then in addition, the ADA compliance. Am I missing anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, was there anything about the parking on the east-west street to the north? Or are we just gonna say because it's signed, there won't be any parking there?
Mayor, council, that is already signed. If Whispering Woods is already signed for no parking. If we wanted to do something different with Pearl Drive, that would take a separate review by the city
Sure.
to sign that.
And Mr. Mayor
Sure.
and
Yeah.
Josh, under the ADA compliance, you will, and permitting and, signing off for that, that's up to you to make sure that all that falls in line, right?
That's correct. And there is a condition in the planning commission's resolution. I pointed out the two that they added to their motion, but there is a condition requiring any necessary building permits that are required. And I guess I would point out that if we are definitely changing a use to retail, and I understand Councilmember Tabbitt's concern with calling it retail, and I can appreciate that. But to the building official, a use change is a use change. And with that carries different occupancy requirements, it carries different building code requirements, different accessibility requirements. So with this being, if this is approved as a retail space, the building official needs to look at that as part of a use permit to ensure that accessibility and requirements are being met at a retail occupancy rather than a storage occupancy. So we would require a building permit and make sure that condition of requiring ADA compliance would be upheld.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So
Yeah, we have-
with, yeah, I was just gonna say, so with that said, and Josh or Mr. Doty's explanation, I'm not, I don't believe that we need to make an amendment to the motion, being that ADA will be addressed through the permitting process. So as I have it, the motion of record is to approve the variance with the conditions that are recommended by the Planning Commission.
Everybody okay with that? Okay, roll call.
Cross. Cross.
He's muted.
Yeah, yes.
Licio.
Yes.
Tabit.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Olson.
No. All right, we have completed that. We will move on to B. 8B, approve resolutions 2021-003, 004, 005. Josh?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so this is a request for a number of different applications for 14398 Delwood Drive. For the council's reference and for anyone else listening, this is the former Speedway site on Delwood. The property is currently been under some renovations to remove the gas station fuel pumps and the overhead gas station canopy. The property is being proposed this evening for a reuse and redevelopment of the property. With this includes the applications that you see here in bold. There's a preliminary and final plat, a couple of conditional use permits, and a couple of variances. The plat is essentially to straighten out a jog in the lot line along the south property line. The conditional use permit is to allow a drive-through restaurant, a drive-through for a restaurant rather, and a second conditional use permit for amendments as needed with the joint access approval and easement agreement between the subject site and the property, the commercial property to the south. And then there's a couple of variances for setback, one to allow a drive aisle setback on the north end of the site, and then a sign setback variance. And I'll go through all of these in just a little bit further detail in just a minute. So the north property of the two shown on the aerial photo is the subject site. Regarding the redevelopment, this is the former Speedway site, and you can see the subject building in the central part of the property and the car wash that is located to the north with the gas canopy on the east side, which has since been removed. And this is a site plan showing relatively the same thing. The plat specifically is to take out a jog in the property, basically on the east side. So right along Delwood, there is a jog in the property, and that jog in the property is to account for underground fuel pumps. Those fuel pumps are being removed from the property, and so the sign, the existing sign for the fuel station, is being removed from the property. So there's no need for that jog any longer. So the plat would allow the straightening of that lot line from its present jog situation, which is what the plat shows here. This is a site plan showing how the property would lay out. Effectively, the pavement would be very similar in nature to the way it is today, with the change of where the overhead canopy was for the fuel pumps is now new parking. And there is a slight reorientation of parking around the building on the east, south, and west sides of the building. This hatched area off of the northeast side is a patio area for the restaurant that's being proposed at this time, which is Blaze Pizza. And so they have a patio out front and a drive-through for that restaurant use. The drive-through, as I understand it, is a pre-order type of drive-through. So you would call in advance and it would be more of a pickup drive-through type of scenario as what is being proposed with that. This is elevations of how the building would look after it is redeveloped. As you can see, the existing fuel station has some of the existing elements kept, but the entire building would receive a facelift. You can see entirely different architectural design with the car wash overhead doors being retrofitted to follow a similar concept, but for an entirely different use of a patio. And you can see the decorative patio out front. There would be another commercial tenant space also to the south. So this would be most likely a 2-tenant building. As I mentioned, there's a plat submitted with the application to straighten that lot line. We reviewed the subdivision regulations and find that the subject lot would comply with the city's regulations for minimum lot size, lot width, and so on. One of the things that we do at the time of plat review is we do a site plan review. A lot of these items are checked at the time of building permit, but we provide this review so that the applicant knows up front where the items of compliance are with our ordinance and where they have more items to go, I guess. And there are a number of items that are shown as compliant and some that are shown not as compliant, not that they can't get there. We do have any non-compliant items that we did with our review are noted in the resolution. So the resolution does account for any of those items. In terms of the site plan review, they're looking at the drive aisle dimensions. There is a condition that was added to the resolution to add an additional 7 feet of space to the island out front. And looking at the site plan, we're looking at this area out front. Presently, there's 31 feet for this drive aisle. They only need 24 to be compliant with our ordinance. And one of the thought processes behind that condition was it would allow a little bit more green space because the site's pretty dominated by pavement and they have some landscaping to add in the front yard. And so that would offer some space for some landscaping. Another condition that was added was to request a sidewalk connection out to Delwood. There is presently no sidewalk or trail on Delwood right now, but in our policies, it is a city's goal with our pedestrian planning that those would be considerations in the future possibly. And so with other businesses, we've requested that a sidewalk connection be added out to the street for to allow if someone does also bike on the frontage road that they could have a safe passage through the site to get to the restaurant and other retail use. Other couple site plan elements I'll mention just briefly. There is some landscaping requirements added to the conditions in the resolution. In addition to that, there was a recommendation added to the resolution for the applicant to consider some of these island spaces, which are not required by our ordinance. So they are presently shown as painted stripes on the parking surface. So staff asked for the applicant to consider possibly using some of these island areas for actual islands with trees. Even though they're not required, they are going to need, again, some space for landscaping out front. And so that was more a suggestion type of a condition, and that is added to the resolution. There is 2 conditional use permits being requested, as I mentioned. One is for the drive-through. The drive-through lays out in compliance with our ordinance. We added one condition that is regarding to screening of the headlights, and that's a standard condition in our zoning ordinance for drive-throughs. Other than that, the drive-through is proposed to fully meet the city's ordinance requirements for drive-throughs. The other conditional use permit is for a cross-access easement with the lot to the south. Really, there is mainly a continuation of the current use being proposed there, but there are some amendments due to the plat. And so there is a potential need for amending that cross-access easement to account for the changes occurring between the two sites. And so there is a conditional use permit in front of you this evening. And that conditional use permit simply allows the city to be able to collect and have the city attorney review any cross-access easement amendments that are necessary to accommodate the redevelopment of the site. Lastly, there's a couple of variances being proposed. One of the variances is for a drive aisle setback, and one variance is for a setback to the freestanding sign that's proposed in the front. So looking at the drive aisle setback, in order to maintain the drive-through stacking lane and an escape lane or a one-way around the north side of the site, there is a pinch point here to the north property line, and that's where the variance is for setback. So it's basically just north of the building. The other sign variance is for up front. You can see this pylon sign in the center of the island here. The applicant has requested that variance to allow for a new sign. And I guess a couple things to point out with that. There is a very non-conforming sign on the property right now. I don't even know how tall it is, but it's very tall. It is non-conforming, and the applicant has proposed a new sign that would be in compliant with our area and height requirements. So more in keeping with much of the other signage in the city. And in turn for allowing that sign to be able to be placed closer to the lot line with perhaps some landscaping behind it. The Utilities Commission did review the request. They recommended approval subject to 3 conditions. Those conditions have been added to the resolution. The city also did complete a review of the architecture through an architectural review application. Staff finds that application can be reviewed administratively because the application does meet the city's architectural requirements. With that, the Planning Commission is recommending approval of the resolutions in front of you this evening. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, council, any questions or comments for Josh? The applicant have any comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So Josh, I know that we don't need to know this yet, but is there any potential occupant for the rest of that building and what kind of business that is or whatever?
Yeah, so good question, Mayor, Council. There has been some early indications of perhaps the laundromat that was indicated on one of the floor plans. I don't know if that's 100% official thing yet, but so that's a possibility, but no other indication at this time. But the Blaze Pizza use has been identified basically from day one. So,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
So Josh, all of the everything that they would need if it was a laundromat, that would suit that. Is that correct? I mean, that we're okay with that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the site is laid out with a parking to meet our retail standard. I mean, and I think they have some extra parking spaces to play. That's really the main thing we would be looking at. Obviously, it would have to be a use compliant with our C2 zoning district, which allows a wide variety of different commercial retail uses. It's possible it could even be a second restaurant. It could be any number of retail uses and fully work as presented. Obviously, if they do change to a use that has additional requirements, say a use that just requires additional parking, they would have to figure that out before the city could issue a permit for that tenant space in the future. But yeah, generally speaking, it should work for most retail uses.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, Mr. Ward, when they split screen here, I lose half of the council, so I don't know if you're raising your hand or not. Sorry. Anybody else? Applicant, any comments, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Chad Connor with Widseth. No, I think the staff has done an excellent job of outlaying our development plans here, and we have all intentions of complying with all requirements and design considerations as we move forward. So with that, no, I'll just entertain questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Chad? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, then we'll look for a motion to, Josh, can we do all three of these in one round, 03, 04, and 05, or?
Yeah, you absolutely can.
Okay, look for a motion from somebody.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion by Mr. Ward, second by Ms. Licio. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Cross,
Yes.
Licio,
Yes.
Tabit,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes. Okay, we move forward. It's going to be a nice project there in that spot, and appreciate the efforts of everybody, both the investor and our staff. Moving down to council comments, Councilmember Licio.
Just one short one. I am the Baxter City Council representative on the board of the Senior Center. And if you just hear the word Senior Center Donuts, usually that brings smiles to everyone's face. And the Senior Center is in needs of donations. One of their donut making machines has gone down. And that's a huge fundraising opportunity for the center. And the center is just phenomenal. The more time I'm there, the more impressed I am with the people there who give so much. And so just if it's on your heart and if you're capable, keep that in mind. The Senior Center needs another donut machine. Thank you.
That's almost a national disaster there.
Exactly.
Councilmember Tabit,
I have none. Thank you.
Councilmember Ward.
Mr. Mayor, just I wanted to again thank all of you for welcoming me last week, our last meeting. And one of the things I did forget, though, I wanted to say tonight was that, I've heard from a lot of constituents already, a lot of the citizens of the city of Baxter, and and they have some questions and issues and things like that I'll be bringing forward to discuss with the full council and the mayor. And I just appreciate the fact that they supported my quest for serving on the city council as well. And so just looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to also, as we switch federal administration, I just would like us all to remember to, that beautiful song, "Let There Be Peace on Earth and Let It Begin with Me," as we move forward. So I just wanted to say that as well, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Cross?
I have no comment tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do enter a new realm tomorrow at noon, and no matter what your persuasion was or is, we are commanded to pray for those that are in those places, and hopefully we've been doing that all along. But for sure, with the troublesome times and potential issues that we're keeping our representatives and people in Washington in our prayers. City Administrator.
Just one item, Mayor. I just wanted to provide a legislative update to the council on a item that is of interest to the city of Baxter. Last week, House File number 30 was filed by Representative Hansen. That bill is intended to award the 2020 LCCMR projects that were slated for award in the last legislative session. Today, the Senate filed House Companion Bill 166, which is for the same on the Senate side. So we are starting to see progress being made to our Whiskey Creek project. As you are aware, that project was slated for $500,000 to go towards the acquisition and soft costs related to the purchase of the 13 acres for the Whiskey Creek project. So if the bills do make it to the floor and get passed, we will have secured that funding. That is on top of the money that we have secured for construction through the Bowser Clean Water Fund that was announced just before the end of 2020. So I'll continue to monitor the progress of those bills, and we'll keep you posted throughout.
Super. Anything else, Brad? John?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to add to that. Representative Hanson was a good friend and colleague of mine when I was in down there. And so if there's anything that I can do as a former colleague of his to help with that process, that would be a big, huge win for all of us in the city of Baxter and the whole area. So I just wanted to offer that. Representative Hanson is a great legislator and a good person, and would love to, help with that process going forward.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Anything else, Brad? Or
No, there's nothing else.
okay, city attorney.
No report.
All right, seeing nothing, we'll look for an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Cross,
Second.
second by Zach. All in favor? Roll call.
Cross,
Yes.
Licio,
Yes.
Tabit,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you